Bricks and Minifigs is your one-stop shop for all things LEGO. Hit the link below to find a store near you.
Hello there, everyone. I'm Lego Gavin Productions on Instagram and Lego Gavin Productions on YouTube. And this is my mock from the Jedi Fallen Order game on Zeffo, the Imperial headquarters, and some of the village.
This is a fantastic build because you've got multiple layers going on here. So let's kind of start with the top section. Take us through maybe starting on this side, what all is happening here.
Yep. So my favorite part from the game is the Imperial headquarters, the base. So I decided to go with the landing pad, and then that leads into kind of the first couple levels of the base with some control centers and things like that. And then you go through the whole Imperial base onto the main village area with a bunch of buildings and structures and a big battle going on.
And some excellent greebling up top here. So what are some of the techniques and pieces you used in this section?
Yeah, lots of greebling and going to different toy stores and finding pieces that are always at the bottom of the bin that no one uses and trying to figure out ways to incorporate those onto the top of the base to add a little bit of detail so it's not just plain and flat.
And then you can see inside here you've got all the great lighting. So what minifigures do you have inside there?
Yep, lots of different minifigures. I took some creative liberties. There's not a big battle going on in the game, but if I'm doing a mock, I need to have some sort of battle going on. So we just have lots of Imperials manning their stations, getting into battle, and we've got some Rebels pushing forward, and they've run into Darth Vader, a little homage to Rogue One and some of the other films. So they're having a hard time, but it should be okay for them in the end. Maybe we'll see.
And directly below that, you've got another internal section underneath there.
So then below the base, there's like mining facilities, so I've got part of the mining facility down there with a bridge, some rock work, and different things like that.
What's happening out here?
Yep, so this part of the game, there's like a little platform with some terrain, some rock work built up around it, and I've decided to put Cal Kestis on there, custom from Brick Tactical. He's taking on a good amount of stormtroopers on his own, and then he's kind of right underneath the landing platform. It's one of the more iconic places in the game where I could just sit and admire all the nature shots of the game. So.
There's even some action underneath the platform as well?
Yeah, we've got some Rebels who are trying to sneak in there, and had to have a couple guys look like they're about to fall off with some heights and everything, and a couple different guys trying to go stealth and everything like that down at the bottom.
So that kind of takes us to the village over in this section, so kind of very different architecture. How did you design these buildings?
So in the game, it feels like a lot of the buildings are a little abandoned or very weathered down. So I decided to go with a lot of masonry brick. The thing with masonry is it looks really good, but it needs some sort of offset to help it look better with texture and everything. So I've got some different plate colors and things like that. Lots of gray. You don't want too much gray, so I did incorporate a couple different colors in there and stuff like that.
What's some of the minifigure action that we have happening out here?
Yeah, minifigs are my favorite part of the whole build. I like to put together a little story. So we've got the Imperials coming out of the base trying to repel the Rebels who are here to try to free the planet from Imperial occupation, and couple different small action scenes with Rebels jumping around, kicking stormtroopers, some hand-to-hand combat, and stuff like that.
It gives that great sense of action to the whole layout.
Yep, I love just setting up all the different lanes of fire and all sorts of stuff for the Rebels, and close quarters combat, all sorts of stuff like that.
Do you have custom elements in here or a mix of everything?
Just all Lego minifigures, a couple custom figures, and then a lot of Brick Arms, Brick Mania, Brick Tactical weapons and stuff like that.
Gotcha. And as we move underground here, this is maybe my favorite section of the build because you start to see all of the gray and black, but with all of this trans blue colors in there. So what's happening in that section?
Probably the most iconic part of the game is these ice caves way underneath the surface. So I had to start with those. Lots of trans blue elements from a mock I did previously, so I got to put those to good use again and kind of make it seem like the ice is coming out of all the different rocks, spilling over, and then the Imperials are down there mining and crates and elevator lifts and all sorts of stuff.
And then on the right side, you've got some more troops in there, much darker, kind of scarier on that side.
Yeah, a little creepier down there, and I've got some of the very old Shadow Troopers from the old battle packs. I love all the old sets and old minifigures, so lots of different small scenes of action and stuff like that. Very fun.
So with a multi-layer build like this, where did you start with and kind of making sure that the top layer would be able to be held up with all those caverns?
Yeah. So I started with the down below with the ice caves, built the base layer, and then underneath I've got a bunch of filler brick and then 16 by 16 plates all the way across the top. And then I can finally do all the details and terrain work in the buildings. But really the big part is making sure it's all structurally stable for building on top of and transporting to the show.
And as you were working on this, were you looking at kind of screenshots from the game, and what was the research process like?
Yep, so this one gave me a good excuse to go back and play through a little bit of the game and then get a bunch of different screenshots and pick out, it's a massive map, so I got to kind of pick out which parts I like the most and which parts I thought would look good into Lego.
And this is definitely a build that benefits a lot from lighting and lets you appreciate the details a lot more. So what types of lighting do you find work well for a build like this?
Yep, so I've got some different brick loot lights and brick stuff lights attached to the ceiling, and the best part about the convention is a lot of the kids down low can see into the tunnels and everything like that. So I wanted to make sure you could see them, because without the lights it's very dark and can't really see much. So I wanted to make sure to have the lights in there, all the detail on the walls, but generally lights on the ceiling, and they're all plugged into the back of the build. All the wires hopefully are hidden, and all the plugs and all the batteries and stuff like that.
And then when you bring this to the show, what was your setup process like?
Yep, this year was a lot smoother than my previous years. I've kind of learned from having all my buildings destroyed in the past and all sorts of disasters.
A lot of trial and mostly error.
Mostly error and late nights at the convention. So this one's a lot easier, just 2 pieces of wood, and I wrapped it in saran wrap. And then a lot of the Imperial base stuff kind of goes separately. You can take it off and transport it separately. A lot easier this year than previous years.
When the public comes up to this show here and you can see that you got a ton of people out here at Brickworld Chicago this year, what are they typically kind of looking at? What catches their eye, especially with kind of multiple levels to look at? You might have kids and adults that notice different things.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of people obviously are fans of the original trilogy, so the Stormtroopers, and then Darth Vader I think is the big one. A lot of kids will see Darth Vader, and then the ice caves definitely I think have been the biggest hit so far, with people looking down there and seeing all the small details.
Well, this is really excellent. I also love the landscaping here, so talk a little bit more about kind of how you incorporate the paths with the natural look as well.
Yep, I'm a really big fan of this studded terrain because I think it gives it a little bit more texture, some tiles mixed in, and then I'm a big fan of historical World War II stuff, so a lot of the paths are stuff you might see in more World War II style mocks or Italian paths and stuff like that. So I really like to incorporate a lot of the historical stuff mixed with Star Wars, and I think it hopefully gives a good look to Star Wars build and makes it a little more unique.
Well, thanks so much for all your work here on the build and for bringing this out to the show. It's fantastic.
Yep, thank you very much.